interpreters code of ethics. Okay, so someone in the audience teaches it. I know we have several interpreters in the room this evening who should know it. And how many deaf people here tonight understand the code of ethics? I don't see a lot of hands out there. You're kind of iffy on code of ethics. Okay, you all should really know and understand what the role of the interpreter is. So the very first one addresses confidentiality. And do you all understand what confidentiality actually means? He says, oh, it means, keep your mouth shut. So here, basically, what Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, RID, and National Association of the Deaf, NAD, I'm sorry, I'm old, I have to put these glasses on to be able to read this. Interpreters must adhere to the standards of confidential communication. And they must have the appropriate skills to do the job. They need the skills to do the job that they're doing. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. They must adhere to confidentiality. You have to be able to trust your interpreters, right? And if you don't trust your interpreter, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to feel apprehensive. If you go to a counseling session and they ask you questions, about how you're feeling and so forth. If you want to hurt yourself, do you want to kill yourself? And they ask you those kind of questions. And, it's kind of hard with an interpreter there. There's not a lot of interpreters here. And I know you're thinking to yourself, I really trust this interpreter that's in here with me? And should I be able to say something? And then you think, no, I'm not going to say it. I just don't feel comfortable. I'm not sure I trust that interpreter. And is that fair to you all? Of course it's not. You need to feel like you can trust that interpreter. And the interpreter must be able to trust you as well. It's actually a two-way street. When an interpreter takes an assignment, and they may put it on their calendar, today I'm going to interpret for John Smith at a mental health session or at the hospital. And maybe it'll say John Smith, I'm going to interpret, he's having a vasectomy today. And let's say that interpreter loses that calendar. Oh gosh, what does that mean? And let's say another person finds it, and maybe that interpreter goes to the deaf club and loses their calendar. And a deaf person picks it up and thinks, oh wow, guess what? John Smith's having a vasectomy here on October the 3rd. And there it goes. He tells his wife, hey, did you know John's having a vasectomy? And she said, well, no. They're planning on having another baby. The husband will say, no, he's having a vasectomy. Look, I found this interpreter's calendar. It's right here. Is that right? And interpreters have a hard time, I include myself in this because I am an interpreter. I always have to put something. Do I just say John Smith? No, I just put JS. And hospital, HOSP, I abbreviate everything. And then I know I have to be there at a certain time, and that's it. And I just try to do a code that's known to me. And then if someone else found my phone or my calendar, they would not have a clue as to what that meant. Of course, that's not easy for us as interpreters. I had to learn that a long time ago because One time I did put John Smith vasectomy, and somebody said, hey, you know you're breaking confidentiality? I said, no, I'm not. I didn't tell anybody. I said, it's right here. And they're like, oh. So, did you all know that? You need to know that. Those are the kind of things that happen. If anybody has anything they'd like to add about confidentiality, go ahead and add that right now. Okay. You know, interpreters must be professional. And what does that mean, professionalism? That they have to know everything? You know, just like a coda. They know everything. Okay. You know, RID, NAD says an interpreter possesses the professional skills and knowledge required for specific interpreter situations. They have to know many things and conduct themselves professionally. And you know, things are changing nowadays. New signs are coming up, or new ways that a hospital does certain things. You have to have shots if you go into a hospital now. What all does that mean? Interpreters have to know that. So, because that impacts you in the deaf community. You know, they have to know the various signs that a deaf person may use. They must provide the service. Let's say if you're deaf, hard of hearing, you're an oral deaf, you're black, you're white, you're purple, if you're a male or a female, you're gay, lesbian, whatever. An interpreter must be professional and adhere to do the job if they have accepted the job. Let's say you arrive to an assignment and the interpreter walks in, and you might say, would you go and interpret over there for me? The interpreter needs to be prepared and ready. And when they meet you at the assignment and when you leave that assignment, the interpreter has to be sure that the deaf person or hard of hearing person has all the information necessary from the time that they arrive for the assignment until the assignment is over. And they have to understand exactly what somebody is saying and provide the message faithfully. If it's in ASL, then I need to know how to interpret into English from ASL. If they say, take the medicine 3 times a day, 2 pills, to make sure you take it before breakfast and after dinner, and you're like, whoa, okay. Let's back up. Now, here it is in ASL. You take these pills here, these times during the day, morning, noon, night. And when you get through eating, don't do that. Take it first, do it at breakfast, take it again at night, but you have to eat first, and go more into explanation of what that doctor really meant. So that's the message, faithfully rendered. They have to be able to see if the deaf person is more English, then great. They can do it that way, but they have to know how to interpret into the appropriate language for themselves. Any questions on professionalism and how interpreters should be professional? Okay, the question from the floor was, what about CDIs, or certified deaf interpreters, and /DI, deaf interpreters? And the reason I say DI is because right now, there's no certification for deaf interpreters at the moment. So, is that true? What are you asking? There's no certification, there's no test right now for certification of deaf interpreters. It's been suspended for deaf interpreters, that's why. We have one CDI, but that test has been suspended, and all interpreters, they are able to take the test now, which will begin in September. But certified deaf interpreters, how many certified deaf interpreters do we have in the state of Kentucky? Somebody said 4, and somebody says 2, now we've got 3. We have 1, and she's in the room with us this evening, Miss Nine Coyer. We have 4 that are in training. Now, Kentucky Licensure Board will recognize the DI, or the deaf interpreter. They will recognize a deaf interpreter. They do not have to be certified. However, you still have to adhere to these code of ethics that I'm sharing with you this evening. And if you become a certified deaf interpreter, you think, oh, well, I don't have to follow these. No, you have to be professional. You have to do all of these same code of ethics. What about a deaf person living in another state can get a CDI and they move to Kentucky? Will Kentucky honor that if they get certification in another state? Let's say another state, they get their certification there. It will be recognized here in Kentucky. They have to fill out the appropriate paperwork and pay the appropriate fees, but it will be recognized here in the state of Kentucky. You know, a deaf interpreter still must follow these code of ethics that I'm sharing with you this evening. How do you work with a professional interpreter and a CDI? Now the question is, a professional interpreter and a CDI, how do they work together? It's a very interesting process. So Nina, do you want to explain that, or do you want me to explain it? I'll quickly try to explain it. Let's say you show up at an appointment, but and one thing I want to clarify is that you have the certified deaf interpreter doesn't mean that the person is feeble-minded. No, the deaf person is not feeble-minded if they request a CDI. It just means that they are very language rich, very ASL language rich. And they are just into the ASL language. It's very beautiful, very strong ASL. Some interpreters will think, you know, how many certified interpreters are in this area right now? I know, you all know there's several here, even in this room. And that work in this area, maybe 2, 3, okay. That's not enough, of course. So we may have to bring interpreters from other areas into this area. And they may meet the person and they find this rich language ASL deaf person, and just ASL, no mouth movements or anything. And the interpreter will say, oh, I think we need a CDI. And the reasons being that a CDI, you know, a deaf person may trust another deaf person more so, you know, because they know that they share the same language. So the deaf person will understand that client much better and be able to interpret to the professional interpreter, hearing interpreter, who will then interpret it to the hearing person. You know, we don't know if somebody is going to take their children, and I'm in court, you know you want to be sure that everything is clear when you appear in court. So you may ask for a CPI. Okay? So the interpreter may say, well, I recommend that, even the hearing interpreter could say that they want. That doesn't mean that hearing interpreter is not a good interpreter. And to me, it just means that that interpreter is very intelligent, meaning that they are very professional in knowing when to ask for the CDL.
I think sometime in Eastern Kentucky,
I think sometimes in
it's
Eastern
more like
Kentucky,
a matter of, it's a cultural difference. These people coming in from Louisville, they don't understand us. We don't need CDI, they just don't understand us. We need local interpreters, understand the culture.
that's a very important point, Marcia. And that's why we are encouraging the DIs